Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ashley Stevenson, staff writer and social media manager for the Michigan Chronicle. And tonight I am joined by an incredible panel of astonishing journalists and content creators who do a wonderfully creative job of sharing Black stories. Please introduce yourselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mariah Johnson. I'm the founder, photographer, and storyteller for Things Black Bodies Do, which is an Instagram-based storytelling platform that highlights the humanity and beauty and variety of Black people in our lives. And I'm also a PhD in sociology at Loyola University Chicago, and happy to be here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lauren Winfrey. I'm a journalist. Right now taking a sabbatical from working in a newsroom. I was last working in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Before then, I was in Madison, Wisconsin. And then before then, I was at Syracuse University getting my graduate degree in broadcast journalism. And I'm just so excited for this conversation with everyone today.
Hi, my name is Ernest Owens. I'm an award-winning journalist and CEO of Ernest Media Empire, LLC. I'm currently based in Philadelphia, where I serve as a writer at large for Philadelphia Magazine, covering the intersection of politics and race.
Hi, everyone. I am happy to be here, just like all of the panelists. My name is Brittany Noble, and I am a journalist. I spent about 10 years on TV in these stations all across the South and the Midwest. In 2018, I filed an EEOC complaint in Jackson, Mississippi about the way that I was treated as a young Black mother in the newsroom. And I have not been on TV since. So I am happy to share my story.
Well, I'm so happy to have you guys. First of all, I just appreciate all of you guys being able to join us here today for the Michigan Chronicle, powered by Real Times Media. Obviously, our goal right now is chronicling the culture, and I just feel like we understand the heightened sensitivity of sharing Black stories right now, especially with unprecedented times using citizen journalism. And I just want to cover and really have a real conversation, and hopefully today you guys, our audience, can go home with a better idea of why it's important to have Black journalists and content creators sharing our stories. Even though journalism is a very unbiased field, there's a bias to it when you're seeing your own Black bodies being slain on TV and on social media. So let's just get right into it. My first question for you guys is, how do you think social media is affecting how we share stories accurately and passionately? Do you feel like it's been a benefit, or do you see there being an issue? Anyone can take it.
I think there are some benefits to it. I think it broadens the awareness, because a lot of people will tell you, oh, I don't watch the news. Like, they aren't turning on the television, but they might go to social media to get some news. The trouble with that is you have to make sure whatever news you're getting is credible. And we know that there's a lot on social that isn't. And then everybody wants to be a journalist, but then blame journalists when they don't like the way something is being told. So it's just, it's a tricky thing. My friends and I talk about it often, but I do think social media has helped in a lot of ways, and then you can reach a wider audience, but there are some issues with social media too.
One of the things that I have found the most interesting about social media is that while it has opened up the conversation for diverse perspectives and people to share their opinions, I do feel as though it has in many ways segregated people from getting away from their silos. So people have created Facebook groups, Twitter, certain niches, and they have really perpetuated and have read from the same people, the same writers, the same types of confirmation bias reinforcement that has sometimes perpetuated the regurgitation of old articles where people don't check the dates, right? Situations where people are sharing, articles that just are not true, coming from bad sources, but because they like the headline and because they like what has made them, what confirms their personal thought about a politician or an issue, they're more likely to share it in that way because someone else did. And so this groupthink culture around issues has led to a lack of nuance in conversations on social media. So while people are more engaged, what are they engaged behind? What are they perpetuating? What fake information or unvetted news are they pushing out? And I think the election of 2016 has showed us how social media is powerful, right? Because it can inform people, but it can also be a weapon to misinform people and lead to bad decisions that are happening in our society.
And that's a good point too, Ernest, that you say that, because it's going to lead into my next question, which is when we are creating those stories, when we are sharing those stories as journalists, we can't share every Black story, you know? And so I feel like when it comes down to myself personally, it's like we have so many interesting things, and so we're so passionate about so much as it pertains to journalism in general. How do you determine what stories should be posted, what stories we should be pushing? And anybody can feel to chime in on that. Ernest, Mariah, Brittany, just let me know how you guys are feeling.
You know, I was just thinking about my time in the newsroom, and you know, I spent a lot of time behind closed doors pushing for certain stories. And so social media really allows us to find out more about what's happening in our community and find out what people are talking about. And so I really like the way that we're using social media to push this game forward. I really do.
I think for me, with the creation of my platform, I was thinking both historically and holistically about the types of stories that are often told about Black people and Black communities. And I wanted to very intentionally counteract those stories and very intentionally show a broader narrative and the multiplicity of Black lives, Black people, Black communities. So when I think about the types of stories I share or choose not to share, it's very much in that vein of thought of what does this say about my people? How am I representing people that look like me and people who don't look like me? So I often like intentionally avoid negative, demonizing stories or violent stories, because I'm like, I want to create this like Black utopia, this Black moment where we don't have to constantly see those images of ourselves, and we can see ourselves and people who look like us or even look a little different than us represented in a way that highlights the humanity rather than a very specific stereotyped and one type of story.
And I really love that, because working for Michigan Chronicle, one thing our CEO and publisher Hiram has said is that on the Michigan Chronicle, you will never see a Black man in handcuffs. And so where some people feel like that's very biased sharing of news, I personally find it refreshing, because we see a lot, like you said, of the demonizing and the criminalization of Black people in general in mainstream media all the time, and there's not enough tangibility to our humanity. So I appreciate the sharing of joy. People don't understand the beauty that it means to be a Black person in America, to understand that Black lives matter, because the only time they see our lives is when it's being snatched away from us and not when we're enjoying it. And I feel like it's so important for content creators, for storytellers, for journalists to really speak to those people and create the empathy that we need to move forward in highlighting Black stories.
Right. And
I add something to that?
Sorry, go ahead, Mariah.
Sorry, Ernest, go ahead.
Well, just briefly, I just wanted to add that what's important is context. I think that I don't mind stories that are, not necessarily the most joyful stories, but I think that every story has levels. And I think that if we are to do stories that involve crime or involve poverty or issues, that we provide context. I think what I don't want is a either or situation. I don't want stories about Black people that are only going to be an erasure of issues that impact us, right? So if I'm seeing a bunch of shows and stories of Black men and women in suits with college degrees, then we ignore poverty, we ignore the working class, we ignore the struggle that still exists. And I think that that's something that we can't lose, that nuance. However, I don't also think that stories that involve working class people or people that are in poverty should only be stories that are connected only in times of crime and hardship. because there is a humanity there that is missing. And I think the problem that I am seeing in a lot of stories is that we don't provide context. A lot of these stories that deal with crime are more complicated than just simply person robbed a store, person goes to jail, mugshot, the end. There's a story there and there's more there. And I think that journalists who do have the resources and means to really provide more context behind what are we seeing and explain that a little bit better provides us more clarity rather than the shock and awe and trauma that often happens when we see these images. And so I have made a point in my field as a journalist, especially when I'm dealing with very sensitive stories or I'm covering a series of stories related to hate crimes. I owe it to my audience and my readers to provide the context, especially, for example, in Philadelphia, we have had a series of murders involving Black trans women. What I hate that happens oftentimes in these types of stories is that there's a story, they say Black trans women murdered, dead, and everyone's, oh my goodness, this is heartbreaking. But we don't talk about who she is or what that individual's done. And sometimes the situation involves sex work and people will say, oh, she was a prostitute. We don't care. But we don't break down the context of the fact that 35 is the average death, is the living rate reported for Black trans women. We don't talk about the fact that they're discriminated. They suffer from job employment. In Pennsylvania, the state of Pennsylvania, there are no protections for trans women when it comes to housing and employment. And that has changed a little bit because of this recent Supreme Court decision. But we're talking about a lot of economic disparity that will put people in these situations where sex work, selling drugs, and these things are the only means of survival for this very vulnerable population. So when we don't put these things in context, we can frame and perpetuate stereotypes about communities that don't necessarily exist. And so what I've been advocating for and what I continue to tell people about stories is that we can have hard stories, we can have positive stories, but context matters. And so that's something I've been advocating for.
Absolutely. Lauren, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, Ernest, I was going to say that's why your work and what you're doing is so important, because you can highlight those issues and you can go beyond that headline or that quick blurb about that trans woman who was killed. And I think that's what it amounts to a lot of time, going beyond that story. So I've done stories in Milwaukee where there was a drive-by shooting, right? So you may only be able to get a certain amount of information that day, but this is why connecting with people, sorry if you hear crying baby, that's my baby. I'm a new mom, y'all, so
We get it.
But it's important to knock on those doors and build a rapport with those neighbors. I've been able to speak with the mother of the victim in one of the cases that I remember vividly. It was a little girl, and I think she was like 10 years old. So I gave them my number. We were texting. When her daughter got out of the hospital, she was like, I would like you to come do a story with her and really humanize that event and that trauma. Because yes, we can talk about the violence that happened, but somebody was affected by that violence. And in this case, it was a baby girl. And just to see her and sit with her, heartbreaking.
Yes, and I think that kind of, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't cut you off.
Pardon me?
I said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was saying, I just think that that's the work that we have to do, especially when it comes to our stories in our communities. We have to go beyond that day turn, that day of news. What's the follow-up story? How can we humanize what's happening here, bring some awareness, perhaps bring about some change, something?
Yeah, and that's a good segue, because I know for myself as a journalist, and Lauren, when I first started, I reached out to you for a little bit of advice, because I wanted to know mentally, when you have to share these stories, when it is a Black trans woman that is murdered and you have to cover it, when it is a drive-by shooting, when a mother has lost her son, when a wife and husband have lost each other, any story that's really grieving and hard mentally, how does that affect you to share that story?
You're asking me in particular?
Anybody.
I was going to say, I'm actually just now completing, just finished my thesis, and it was about Black women in trauma. And while I thought it was really important that we tell our own stories to some degree, I didn't realize just the emotional flavor of telling the stories of so many Black women experiencing trauma. And so for me, it was about feeling it deeply, like acknowledging that reality of it, but telling it accurately as I could. And I think that we have to, with community and just like for ourselves, really take step back and be honest about how these things impact us, if they do or if they don't, and tell the story as accurately as possible. That's kind of my two goals, like taking care of myself, trying to be healthy, trying to self-reflect and connect with how it's impacting me, but also just telling the story as accurately as possible to make sure that the women's stories are honored, the women's lives are honored, and that I don't betray them or my community in that.
And I appreciate that. Did you have to say, Brittany?
Yeah, I would just like to say that for me, I've taken my mental health very seriously after spending 10 years on TV. That's when I started actually, talking with therapists and diving into all of these things that I've covered. When you're in the newsroom, and my mom was a police officer too, so I'm totally desensitized. Like when there's major events happening in the city, like I'm just in mode and I can just handle it. And dealing with everything that we see in the media, dealing with Mike Brown's death. We just dealt with the 6-year anniversary on the 9th, and dealing with that and everything that I saw in Mississippi, anxiety, depression, just like completely weighed me down. And while I got help for it, I realized that a lot of my mentees now they're reporting on COVID, and now they're really dealing with the Civil War. And I never experienced anything like that before. So actually just today, I enrolled in a mental health class at a community college here in town, just to get some of those tools so that I can begin to help people in my community deal with all of the trauma that we're seeing.
And so in addition to that, first of all, I just want to thank everybody who has joined us since we've started to our Black Media Matters panel. We're having a conversation with journalists and content creators just on, the state of journalism right now, specifically as it deals with social media and creatively sharing the stories that we have as Black people. And also, I just want everyone to know that we will be taking questions. So feel free to pop some questions in there so we can talk to you guys as well, because we don't have stories to tell without you, frankly. And we just want to know whatever questions you may have that will better assist us in assisting you with letting us know how we can help accurately and effectively share your stories with the same passion and intensity that you share with us. My next question to you guys is, so I personally had an issue with this. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but it's the memification of stories, of Black stories. So with Eric Garner and with George Floyd, we had videos, we had body cam. There's several times we've been able to see that tangible hard evidence. But with stories like Breonna Taylor, one that I was deeply affected by was Elijah McClain. It kind of became cartooned. And not that there's necessarily anything wrong with that, but I want to know, as a content creator and as a journalist, do you feel like the memification and the cartooning of these stories heightens awareness, or do you feel like it leads to desensitivity of the situation versus us just telling the story?
I think that one of the things that have been really frustrating about it on social media is that, I think there's a place for imagery. I think there's a place for different types of visuals that can be used for social media to, bring awareness. But I also ask the question, where is it going? And what I'm seeing with some of these visuals is that they don't lack any actual call to action, any information used to actually drive energy, right? When you saw George Floyd creations, images created, there were people who were directing people to help fund the funeral, links and bios. When you look at how much money George Floyd raised, over millions and millions of dollars, way more than what Breonna Taylor was getting. A lot of the people who were seeing the energy was directing their images to petitions. And with Breonna Taylor, there was a lot of memes and visuals that was created, but didn't drive up fundraising, did not drive up petitions, did not drive up places where people can be active in supporting her. And I also think part of that issue, and I think it's important for journalists to do this, is that we need to think about, and this is something I think about just with any story I do, but as a person who covers local issues and national issues, where are the people directly in the community involved in this? Why are we not amplifying and driving up the interest of those who live in those communities? What are the organizers and the activists on the ground in that city doing? Why are we not talking to them and asking them what their local community on the ground efforts are? We spend so much energy, highlighting celebrities and what their stances are and what their shout outs are, but we have not yet really tapped into the local organizing culture of these areas, the people who protest on the ground, but even the finances and the fundraising that is driven to help those families. So that is something that personally has been upsetting with me with the memification, that there's even a double standard in them. With George Floyd images, I do often see people who do point to a link or use the image alongside of a cause or a petition or fundraising. The GoFundMe was driven by people using these images to also lead people to fund. But Breonna Taylor, we got these beautiful visuals, these graphics, and even these sarcastic memes and jokes about, arrest the officers. So yeah, everyone's saying arrest the officers. But one of the things that annoyed me the most was that, and what I put up images was, well, did anyone ever tell us the names of those officers? Did we ever get pictures of those officers? Why didn't we ever name the officers? Why didn't we ever show the images? And so when I got on social media, when I finally, I looked up the officers, saw their pictures, I said, these are the officers who killed Breonna Taylor. Say their names, let people know who they are. Let's talk about resignations. Let's do some background searches in them journalists. Let's look into their criminal records. And what I noticed is that recently there has been journalists who've been looking into these officers' backgrounds and histories, but we did that immediately with George Floyd. The people who killed George Floyd, those officers, those people were immediately named. Their images were there. And so my thing is that I think memes are important. I think social media can be important, but we have to drive the story. And I think there's a sexism and a misogynoir that happens with Black women, where there's an emphasis on beauty and this innocence, and she could be your daughter and she could be this. It's like, they don't have to be any of those things for us to give them the humanity and the respect and the acknowledgement of their lives. There's something interesting about that, because with George Floyd, his history was very much different from Breonna Taylor's quote unquote history, but there was a direct calls for justice for him that isn't necessarily given to Black women when these crimes happen. There's always this relativity. There's always this, we have to see her in this type of way, or there has to be celebrity appeal. And I think that that's something that we have to change in this.
I totally agree with you. And in addition to that, I know that you mentioned that there are journalists now who are digging into the backgrounds of these cops who are, just basically murdering people in the street, murdering our Black counterparts and people in general, and not being held accountable. And that's really where my thought process was. And I asked the question on my Instagram, and it was a lot of people who said that they felt like it was helpful. But then I asked, okay, so you've heard the story, but what did you actually do to help? And I understand it, and it does well for trending and for SEO. We get it. But if there's no action, there's no call to action behind it. I completely agree with you. I don't feel like there has to be a relatability beyond this was a human that was like unjustly murdered. They were slain in the street. And I don't feel like we should have to attach them to a role. And in addition to that, I think that there has been a pushback from the journalistic community, because we've had people from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and New York Times, where the editor stepped down because of the insensitivity of the fellow journalists. I remember they put up an article, I think that was in the New York Times, and it said buildings matter too. And I remember when I saw it, I was like, I couldn't.
Yeah, that was in Philadelphia.
That was Philadelphia, yes. So
Yeah, that was here, and so I was in the
yeah.
midst of all of that when that happened, and it was again, the headline was "Building Lives, no, Buildings Matter Too," and that executive editor did resign. So we take care of what we take care of in Philadelphia.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'm going to open up to our audience. Please let us know if you have any questions. You guys, Mariah, Lauren, Brittany, if you guys have any thoughts in the midst before I grab a question from our audience, please feel free to share anything, any thoughts you may have.
You know, one thing that just came to mind is that, you know, I think this is a difficult time for a lot of people. They're having a reckoning. They're being inspired by what they're seeing. And so, yeah, they may be inspired to create a piece of art, and maybe they are inspired to even post it. Maybe they didn't have a call to action. I think that we just need to tell folks what they got to do or what they need to do, and they'll do it. They just need to know what to do, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. I have a question here, and the question says, has mainstream media ever urged you as a journalist to ignore or even embellish culture when covering a particular news story involving individuals of color? How did this change the context of the coverage? Anybody want to take that?
I can't say that has happened to me, but I'm also just trying to understand the question. Ignore even.
Yeah, it's happened for me
me
recently, just with my hair, with news platforms. They hear, you know, okay, she struggled with wearing her natural hair. Yes, I struggled with wearing my natural hair at WJTV. I struggled with a whole bunch of other things too. And that's all they wanted to talk about. And then like just associating me with natural hair and wanting me to just, you know, wear my hair natural when maybe that day I want to wear my hair straight. You know, maybe I want the ability to switch my hair up the way that I want to. So I feel like sometimes I have actually more recently after leaving the newsroom been pushed in a way to try to tell my story in a way that I don't want to tell it.
Thank you for that question. What are the ways specifically that Black media addresses these nuances when it comes to police brutality?
I'll take that. I think one of the things that we have to do, specifically the Black media, that I have been seeing is bad conflation, especially in cities like Philadelphia, right? Baltimore, even Detroit, maybe, where we've allowed our community to continue to make this conflation between gun violence in our communities and extrajudicial police shootings. And a lot of that narrative around Black on Black violence, but juxtaposing it with police brutality has created, I think, a lack of empathy and a lack of misinformation around why, in fact, taxpayers' dollars is going to police systems that are working against the people, and how instances of gun violence in our communities, which are very traumatic and which are very problematic, are not necessarily a unique phenomenon in the Black community as it is in white communities or other communities that are in proximity of each other. And so I have been in situations as a Black journalist that dealing with radio stations locally, Black-owned media. We have a Black-owned radio station here in Philadelphia called WRD, and there has been commentary where people have made conversations about, we shouldn't have police brutality, but Black people shouldn't be killing each other. And it's this false equivalency that has led to a lot of misunderstanding and also a lot of division, unnecessary division amongst people who are rallying against gun violence in their communities, against Black Lives Matter and protesters. And it's sad because these two things are the byproduct of white supremacy. They work in different ways, right? You have a society that has really positioned Black people to hate each other, to dislike each other, to be impoverished, to be systematically pushed out, and not given resources to address mental health, to address poverty, to address opportunity access. And in many ways, that has made them vulnerable to the hands of a law enforcement system that deems them not as worthy, but has also put them in an environment, a community to which other people react to one another in ways that are more violent because they think those are the only options. And it's sad that those types of conversations aren't happening as much in local media and in conversations when we talk about police brutality, because we keep conflating these issues as if they're one, when they're issues that are separate and should be given an equal level of unique attention and nuance.
Sorry. I know for myself, when it came to being in the Black media and addressing it specifically, for me, it was about being on the street with the people. When everything first happened, when George Floyd was unfortunately slain in the street, and we had our first set of protests here in Detroit, for me, it was about being on the street and also as a journalist, but also as an ally, as an activist, being out there and being able to accurately share the stories and show the people that were out there who were outraged and not silencing those voices. And I think sometimes in media, it's cool to play it safe because we don't want to offend anybody, and we have people that we need to report to, and we have a civic duty. But at the same time, we need to see this. I need to share this because this is what's happening in our community. And people look to us to share, especially in this time during fake news. They need to see what's really going on, and that we as media or people in the media actually care to help them and share what's going on. I thought I saw another question here. I guess not. Oh, here it is. Has anyone ever had a situation with racism against you in the workplace?
Yeah.
Who hasn't? I mean, who hasn't? I mean, there's anti-Blackness in Black newsrooms. I mean, it's real.
It's very real. I would say I had been on TV. I'd worked in Arkansas, I'd worked in Tennessee, and now I'm going to Michigan and to work in Flint, Michigan. And once I got there, we had heard this story that the news director who had just been hired and had just hired me walked in there after the 10 p.m. newscast and said, white, we need some color up in here. And the next thing they know, they hired me and my friend, this white guy, who's a Black guy, and we were the colors, basically. In the room and spiced it all up a bit. So like when we got there, they were like, oh yeah, she said, white. And, we need some color, and here we are. And so, I saw that, but I really didn't just face the racism in the newsroom not until St. Louis, and when I was dealing with the death of Mike Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, and just trying to share stories and not being able to get them to see my perspective, not understanding why I needed to explain why people were protesting and why they decided to do what they were doing, and fighting for these stories and feeling like I was ugly, and then realizing, okay, you're not the ugly girl, you're the Black girl. And it took for one of the anchors had been at the station for 40 years, I think, more than 40 years, and had worked at all the other stations in the market. And she saw me coming out of my boss's office one day after getting called in there and being called emotional. And I didn't want to act emotional in front of him or let him see me being emotional. So I'm trying to run out of the newsroom, and she's like, Brittany, she's calling me. I cannot even stop. This is my sorority sister. Like, I have so much respect for her. I cannot stop. And afterwards, she sat down with me the next day and said, I'm so sorry I hadn't been there, for you, and just trying to open herself up to me. And I was like, I thought you and my mom had already fought this battle for me. I thought that y'all had already done this. And she was like, did you think your roots were blonde? And I was like, low-key, yeah, I really kind of did. Like, I'm really, really feeling like everybody should be equal in the newsroom, but the reality is we are not all equal. Like, there is such thing as minority weekends, and please be here on Saturday morning so that you can work. So, yeah, have I dealt with racism? I could go on and on. When have I not dealt with racism? You know, and that's why it really, really hurts when people say things like, oh, we don't see color. Like, okay, you really don't see me because I am struggling over here. So, yeah, I've dealt with racism in the newsroom. I have so many examples for Mississippi. I don't even want to waste time, but yes, absolutely.
I think that there have definitely been a lot of microaggressions in my case. And I feel like both stations I was hired at, it was like a part of some minority push. And I feel like news stations just do that often, especially in broadcast news, like one of you, then the rest can be white. And, you know, we filled this quota. So unfortunately that happened. What'd you say?
You can't anchor together.
Right. You can't be on the same shift. We need one day side, one on mornings, maybe. Then we need you on the weekend. So that has definitely happened to me. But honestly, I've taken the opportunities that I've been given and I've run with them, and I use it to create a platform to tell our story. So worked out to my benefit, but it definitely happens in news a lot, and it's pretty disturbing when it's so blatant, you know, like you were talking about, Brittany.
You know, I really haven't experienced racism in working where I work now, but definitely leading up to it, there was a lot of, we like Ashley, she's sassy, you know, like she's spicy. She has a little hurrah to the office. And I was like, are you trying to fucking get up? Are you trying to find a nice way? There was a lot of urban.
Why is sassy the go-to though?
I don't know, like
I don't understand.
Like, Lauren, you're so sassy. Or one time I was asked, Lauren, what does bi Felicia mean?
Oh my gosh, I got the bi Felicia too.
Like,
imagine being Black and gay where it's like, oh, you give me life. He gives me life in Africa. Okay.
Yeah.
Why am I giving you? I don't. Why am I giving you? I feel like for me, it was like a lot of that, and you know, there's like the telltale. I provide like an urban flair because a lot of times, I was the only Black person working where I was working, and although I had white people who were uneducated about how to compliment a Black woman, it was definitely sometimes where, you know, before I did this, it was a lot of 30-inch weaves going on. So it was like, oh, I love your hair like this. And it was so cute when you grew it out. And I'm like, no, I sewed it in. So it's a lot of that going on, which kind of brings me to my next point. When you have had those microaggressions or those weird moments for all of you guys, just in public, as Black people, as Black women, as a Black man, how have you worked to overcome those, especially with your position? Mariah, you're getting your PhD. Lauren, you're a journalist. Ernest, you're an award-winning journalist. Brittany, you're an amazing journalist as well, incredibly talented. And when you become a journalist, we kind of hold a public figure role, you know? So our clapbacks have to be like a tinge more classy sometimes than I would actually say if they were just on my own. So for you guys, how do you overcome those adversity without losing yourself, with staying true to who you are?
Well, for starters, I think, you know, I always tell people I get paid to have an opinion, and others don't. And I think for me, it's just recognizing and focusing on my audience and what I'm writing about, why am I writing it, and I don't belong to any of these people. I think that that's something that is very important in this field, is that too often I see a lot of young journalists, and I'm 28, I'm young, but a lot of the younger ones that I have worked with, I've had to tell them that this ideology of paying your dues and being a slave to people in this industry to eventually one day get to the root of freedom doesn't exist. This myth doesn't exist. Either you are bonded and enchained in this culture and you will be that way until they let you go, and you're basically lost and you're displaced and you're self-worth and sense of being is lost as well, or you decide one day to say, you know what, this is not how it's going to be. If I want to maintain my sense of peace, what's important to me and my values, and recreating that way. And I did that for myself. I have been a free slave since 2016. I've been a free man. I have worked for myself and have freelanced on my own terms. And when I talk to folks that are still out there in the plantation politics of media, and they tell me the things about, you know, how they're being told how to dress and what to do to be accepted or be embraced, I tell them that I was on the Forbes 30 under 30 list independently last year. And that's not to say that it works that way for everyone, but I tell people that you can find your own level of success, but you have to prioritize your well-being. They will not be in charge of your happiness. They will not be in charge of that value. You have to find that within yourself, but you also have to surround yourself and understand why you do this work. A lot of people get into the business, they do it for fame, they do it for recognition, they do it for followers, and you can get all of those things. And what happens once you get the blue check? What happens once you get the award? There's always going to be something else you want to chase if you don't take the time to evaluate why you're in this profession. And so I tell Black journalists specifically, understand why are you here, and what are the stories that you're trying to tell and why. And if you're focused on those stories, and if you're focused on why you're in the profession, then all of the white noise, literally and figuratively, doesn't really matter. I hear people say, oh, I disagree with your article. That's fine. Like, you know, it's okay. Like, okay, you don't like it. You don't agree with it. The goal was never to win everyone over. The goal wasn't to actually ask for your approval. And I will tell you that 95% of my pieces I write are for Black people. When I get a white person's opinion about what I write, I'm like, well, this is in a different language. This is a foreign concept to you. This wasn't for you. I wasn't thinking of you when I wrote the piece. And so for you to assume that you're entitled to what I'm writing about and what I'm talking about as a Black person, I think that that's what we have to be okay with as Black people, knowing that when we produce content, our goal isn't always to appeal to mainstream white people audiences. Sometimes it might be speaking to that community that's impacted by whatever happened. I feel validation when I write a story on a community or individual or family, and I say, hey, did I get this right? Did I tell this story right? And they say, yeah, that's my story. That was my experience. If that source or that person I do that profile on an interview with say I got it right in characterizing their situation, that's the stamp of approval I get. Whether other people like what was said or not said, it is what it is. But as long as I am telling stories about my community that is accurate and fair and balanced, then that's all that matters as a journalist for me.
Yeah, of course. And you guys, ladies, I want to hear from you too. What adversities and how you have overcome those adversities that you have experienced in your positions as content creators, journalists, doctors. What have you done?
I just think about, I'm not the same person that I was when I first entered this business. I just do not have the same mindset. You know, I remember when I was a young student member of the National Association of Black Journalists, and I was like, my name is Brittany Noble. And they were like, no, your name is Brittany, and you need a weave. And I was like, okay, let me do it. You know, this is what you got to do to get a job, you know? And then this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. And I'm living for other people and making steps and moves based off of what other people, you know, may think that I should be doing and not really living up to myself. And so I would just say that, you know, you have to be true to yourself and you have to follow your heart and you just have to stay in your own lane, you know, when deciding how to approach things in the newsroom.
Yeah, I definitely think that there are ways to assert yourself in a newsroom if you decide that you still want to work in a newsroom. And there are ways to advocate for your stories, the kind of stories that you want to be told for them to be told. And we can argue that it shouldn't take advocating for it, but sometimes you have to do it to get that story on air. And there are also ways to kind of establish the look that you want. I remember I went to my news director and I told him I wanted to wear Senegalese twists. And yes, it had to be a conversation, but it was something that I decided I wanted to do, and I did it. And I loved it, and it was easy, and it was convenient, and I was working the morning shift, so it was really helpful for me. But I remember when I was first starting off, trying to get a job in news, I was at Syracuse, and I had Senegalese twist there, and it was on my reel that I had from my first job, and I sent it to a veteran Black woman journalist in Detroit, and she was like, "Oh, you need to take those clips off because you're never going to get a job with your hair like that." And I did. And then I wore my hair like that on air in a real job. So there are ways to assert yourself, but I do think it's a process of finding yourself. And that's for anybody who's young, starting out in a industry, especially one like news, where you can often feel just unappreciated and undervalued. It's tough. But I think as you grow and as you grow more into who you are, you can really start to make that clear in any space you're in.
Lauren, my boss told me that my natural hair was unprofessional and the equivalent to him wearing a baseball cap to go to the grocery store. And that viewers needed to see a beauty queen. And he asked me to straighten my hair to where it was, the way it was, because that's what looks best.
Where were you working?
That was Jackson, Mississippi.
That's horrible. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, it's everybody has their own stories, and to be quite honest, I didn't grow up wearing braids. I didn't grow up wearing twists. And I didn't know about different natural hairstyles. Shoot, at the time, all I knew to do was my 2 little crown braids, and that's what I was rocking, but it just was not okay with him. So I would just say, to each its own. I love to see the way things are moving and changing, because in the beginning of my career, yes, I could only wear straight hair. And really all through my career, I could only wear straight hair. It's not until now that I'm seeing that it's normal to wear your natural hair texture. Yeah. So it's changing slowly.
Mariah, what about you?
Yeah, I honestly agree with, everything that's been said. It seems like there's these two elements of identity and purpose. And when you focus on purpose, why you're here, why you're doing what you want to be doing, what you're calling, all of those elements, that kind of keeps all the racism and the microaggressions at bay enough for you to get through the day. But as you do that, forming your identity is so crucial. Deciding what type of, for me, storyteller and scholar I want to be, but for someone else, journalist, educator, whatever it may be, deciding who you want to be and shaping yourself after that. And it can include mentorship, but I also think in some ways, especially like in my space, Black educators before me were in a very different space. And it sounds like Black journalists were in a very different space. So they were very used to assimilating in a specific way. And I think that our generation is having an opportunity to break away from that assimilation and to really stand out and stand on top of our own identity instead of code switching or, trying to adopt this professionalism and whitewashing of who we are just so we can get a job, So I see that shift happening. And I think it's been really important for me to form my identity, to decide what type of hair I want to wear or what kind of looks I want to, because I remember my orientation for my PhD program, they said, if you're a person of color or a woman, you're going to be judged harshly for how you look. Like they just said it. And I was like, oh, thank you. And like, it was such a weird moment. And I think every person of color or woman in the room kind of looked around because it felt like everyone was looking at them all of a sudden. And there's this guise of sexism that's called professionalism. Sexism and racism that's called professionalism that we've kind of had to free ourselves from and to advocate for that change. So
yeah, and I really feel like in listening to you guys, it's a great segue into my final question for you all. I know when I was first trying to become a journalist, I know everyone's talking about their hair. I didn't really have too many issues with hair, but I do have tattoos. And I remember it not necessarily being okay. I remember my mentor before, she was absolutely against any type of tattooing. And I was very nervous. And I think maybe because I'm not on TV and I'm a writer, that it's a little bit more understood. So in that, those were kind of some of the adversities. And then I specifically remember something not necessarily having to do with appearance, but just in general. She told me that nobody is ever going to open a door for you in this business. And she said, not even me. And she said, right? And she said, it is your job to open your own door and to take your own seat at the table. And then I went to a women's event, and another one of my mentors said, once you get a seat at the table, it's your job to pull up a chair for somebody else. And in that, I just want to ask, do you guys have any advice for up and coming student journalists or up and coming content creators that you would like to share that they can take with them on their journey to sharing Black stories?
I would say don't feel so quick to compromise. One of the things that I've noticed a pattern about young people that's so anxious to get in the industry is that they're really quick to do whatever it takes to get in. And that ambition is good to some degree, but it's also, a little disappointing because, I try to encourage people to have some morals and some standards about what you're willing to do. And I think they come in like, whatever I got to do to get into business, if that means I got to work 40, 60,000 hours or not get paid, right there, well, I'll do it for free. Whatever it takes. And it's like, no, you're still a person. Labor is real. And you need to set your own standards and parameters. And that's something I learned very early in my career that a mentor told me. Because when I first came in the game, they asked me, said, what do you do? I said, I'm willing to do whatever. I said, that's the wrong answer. Like, what is some of the things that you're willing not to do?
Different types of mentors.
Yeah, like they told me, they said, that's the wrong answer. They were like, you're an adult, number one. I was at that time 22. They said, you need to, don't let you'll get exploited that way. And I think that that's something that I see a lot of young people go through is exploitation. There's a lot of people out here that believe that they can keep paying grown adults with experience and exposure when there are a lot of these kids who are doing some really great work, but they can't keep their lights on. They got tons of bylines, but they don't have any lights on. They can't eat. They go to conventions starving. And I think that that's sad that in an industry of TV, especially the TV industry, that has millions and billions of dollars. I mean, NBC, Comcast, Universal, Fox, these are billion-dollar companies.
Yes.
And we see young Black people out here doing this work and starving. And so there has to be conversations that we can do as mentors and older folks, checking in with these kids to make sure that they're not being exploited. So there's times where I take in new people and I'm saying, what are you doing? What kind of work are you doing? Are you getting paid? And if you're not getting paid, what can I do to advocate for you to start getting paid for these contributions you're putting onto these websites and to these publications? And so I'm making sure people are eating and self-sustaining, not just me giving them money. Like, yeah, I give money sometimes, right? But I also want to teach you how to start advocating to get money for yourself.
And I think
that's something that I've been doing
like that.
You just have to be creative in your side hustles, which is something that I've learned. Your dream may be to be on TV. Your dream may legit be to be the local news anchor. And we appreciate you for doing that work because we need you in that position. So thank you for what you're doing, but we do realize it's a gift, right? And so one thing I've learned is my side hustles and how to make, how to make my money work and my time work for me. So I think that just comes with time and figuring it out for sure. But follow your heart. If I say nothing else, like just follow your heart. Follow your heart.
Lauren or Mariah?
I'm going to try and talk really quickly before you can hear my baby crying. But I think, Brittany, much like what you said, side hustles, yes, like that, they have sustained me, that and my parents. So thank God for them. But I just think that right now, when you're not working for anyone and you really are just creating content for social media and things like that, create the content that you want to create and also become a credible source for people, because that makes all the difference too, because you can put up anything, right? And we know a lot of people on social are lazy. So if you, especially if you have a big following, they're going to eat up whatever you say. So if you really want to break into this industry and establish yourself as a journalist, really have some credibility behind you so that people know when they see your stuff, when they read what you wrote, there's some truth to it. And they can depend on you to get some accurate information. And I am so big on just helping people whenever you can, whether it's just a quick phone call, responding to a DM on Instagram, whatever the case may be, help people, because I just don't believe anyone does this alone. And I do think that we need to open doors for other people because it's important, it's necessary.
And I think building a name for yourself goes beyond you getting a platform, right? So like you said, Lauren, helping people, building community, building rapport with people, establishing yourself beyond just, you know, the lights and the camera. Who are you and how do people know you is an important element of it. I know for me, becoming a scholar, my name and my face are kind of everything. So I have to make sure there's a good reputation behind my name. I have to make sure every time I work with someone or conduct research in a community that I leave with having a good relationship with those people. So that's something that's really important to me, how I'm connecting with people, how I'm relating with people, which also connects to the type of stories and how I tell the story. I think Ernest mentioned it. Did I represent your story accurately? Did I tell that story accurately? Because that impacts the taste you leave in people's mouth and the reputation you have behind your name and behind your face, which I think is really critical at any stage in your career.
Yes, and I feel like for myself, the advice that I would have is to build a network and to never lose your sense of curiosity. Widely, anything that I feel like I have had beneficial to my career was from interpersonal relationships that I had formed with people. All four of you I met at different stages of my life and in my career, and I have been inspired. And I know that we talked a little bit yesterday about how I met Ernest and Brittany at NABJ 2 years ago when I was interning for free and working as a legal secretary and kind of explaining to them like, yo, I can't get a job as a writer anywhere. You know, and Ernest encouraged me and Brittany encouraged me to continue to blog. And then when I talked to Lauren, she made herself available when she was in her positions, because I'm like, hey, can I just maybe take you out for coffee so I can just kind of figure out how I can get this done? And then I watched Mariah with these visceral and very intrinsic videos, and I started to form relationships with these people so that I got a better understanding, and it helps to build your craft and really build that seat for you at the table so that you can pull a chair to someone else's. So if I have to say anything, it's don't lose your sense of curiosity. Do not get weary in well-doing. Develop just a hint of thick skin, but never lose your spirit. Don't compromise yourself for anyone or anything in this world, because I truly am a strong believer in whatever is supposed to be yours will be yours. Just continue to do the hard work because a lot of people's talent gets them where their character cannot. Keep them. So integrity is a huge part of it. I first of all just want to thank all of you guys for joining me today. I appreciate you. I look up to all of you guys. I wish you the best in everything that you do. Enjoy the rest of your summer. Wear your mask. Have fun. I want to thank our viewers for joining us today. Thank you so much for joining our panel, Black Media Matters, creating content for a cause. Keep sharing. Most importantly, keep pushing people to share our stories, but also push them to action, because there's still a lot that needs to be done. And the cops that murdered Breonna Taylor still need to be arrested. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening. Bye, guys. Thank you.
See you all.